Oh, happy Monday from London. Yes, I am in London for the week. And today's episode, my friends, is going to be about Karen Huger and her sit down with Andy Cohen, who came to Potomac to interview her shortly after her release from jail. And I have some other things I want to talk about. So let's just jump right on in.
We need to talk about this.
All right, my friends, I hope you guys are all doing well. I am on London time. Yes, sir. I told you guys I would be in London for this entire week. Jeff's here for work. And so I am going to be using London and this hotel as my workspace this week. But not to worry, I am still connected to everything over on the US thanks to NordVPN. This is not a sponsored shout out to NordVPN. I have been using NordVPN for over a year and a half now, and it does really help with travel or having access to things, or like when I'm back in the US and I want to watch shows like Real Housewives of London on Hayu, I can do that. So, anyways, I'm going to be bringing you guys all the tea, all the content on time, probably a little earlier. I'm about 5 hours ahead of all of you. So I think at the time of recording this podcast, it is probably 6:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. At any rate, obviously we had the Karen Huger one-on-one with Andy Cohen last night. And I have to say, overall, I thought it was very well done. I think the questions that Andy asked were the important questions I think we all wanted asked of Karen. And listen, we haven't heard anything from Karen about any of these things that led up to her arrest, the video, the body cam footage, what led her down this road. We did see Karen at BravoCon, and she was there and she was met with a lot of love. I did come out and say that I felt a little bit I felt like it was a little bit too much with the standing ovation. I get why people were happy that she was there. I want Karen to win. I love Karen. I do think Karen is on a journey, and the journey will be interesting to watch because I do feel she'll be back on Potomac. She's very much needed. I've said that multiple times throughout this last season that aired. And yeah, I mean, listen, I think there's a lot of things that came out of this interview that I think are important. And one of the things that she talked about, I can relate to from a personal stance. And yes, trigger warning, we will be talking about sexual assault. So if you're not in the mood to hear that, just know that this topic will be discussed on this episode today. But where do I begin? Okay, real quick before I jump in to the Karen Huger one-on-one, I want to address a couple things. So, in light of what's been going on in America, is a lot of, in my opinion, a loss of moral code. I'll start there. A lot of you reached out again to let me know how disappointed you are in me speaking on political situations that are occurring. And although normally I am here to have the back and forth with you, this is one of those things I simply do not care to debate. I cannot stress this enough. I do not work for you. And when I say you, yes, my entire audience is the reason why I'm here. However, I have a platform. I will be able to speak on things as I see fit. I addressed this last week when I made the post about Vicky Gunvalson. And listen, I'm not trying to cancel Vicky. I just want you guys to be aware that there's a lot of things that even Bravo audiences let slide based on who the person is. So as I mentioned, you know, I shared some posts that she publicly liked and some accounts that she followed that I found to be problematic in the sense of, Vicky's this Christian woman and she is very strong about her convictions around being a Christian. And we've heard her discuss these things multiple times. I'm just not sure what type of Christian she is because, in my mind and in my spiritual journey, and someone who does believe in Christ and someone who does believe in Christ consciousness and all that aside, I just don't agree with what's happening right now. And if you do agree and claim to be a Christian, then I think there's some issues there. I'm sorry. And I'm not claiming to be a Christian because I feel that that falls under religious territory and I don't agree with religion at all. I think religion is a cult. I do. I think it's to brainwash people and control people. I think if you are a follower of Jesus and you believe the things that he taught, then you wouldn't be for any of the behaviors that we are witnessing in the country right now. And I'm not even in the US right now, but I'm saying in the USA, with everything that's happening, it's unacceptable to me. So for everyone that sent me messages saying that you're unfollowing me because I'm speaking out politically, quote unquote, when really what I'm discussing and what I'm speaking out on is moral code. Where's the moral code? This is supposed to be a Christian nation, one nation under God. God wouldn't allow that. God wouldn't sign off on that. I don't care what you believe in or what your pastor is telling you. Mind you, the people that have come to me with these issues are Christians. Because when I go to your bio, you have a Bible verse and a cross and all these things. And you guys, for the most part, are the ones writing the most god awful things in the comment sections that I'm seeing. So I will say this for the last time, and I mean it. You don't need to tell me you're unfollowing me. I don't care. If you are disagreeing with what I'm speaking out on, then that means you're not the vibe and you should leave because I find you to be a big hypocrite. And will I watch Orange County because Vicky's on it? Of course I will. I guess my point is that everyone's a hypocrite. So I don't want to hear anything about any other housewife and where their affiliations lie when everyone knows where Vicky stands and will continue to applaud and support her. So there's that. So for everyone that came from me because I went to Capitol Hill with Angie K from Salt Lake City, you guys can go fuck off because I don't want to hear another fucking thing because she's not the one liking posts about these god awful things and standing for what I feel is the wrong side of things. No. So, yes, we all can be aware of where people stand. I just think that if you're gonna feel that way, then stay out of my lane, stay out of my vibe, because I'm not here for that. I'm not promoting that type of behavior. I think everyone has a right to a better life. And yes, whatever the cases are, everything's nuanced and layered, obviously, but the behavior around this administration and these federal law officers are are not it. It's not ever going to be okay with me. I don't care how you try to explain it. And for everyone, I appreciate you trying to explain your stance. I don't need you to. I am fully able to do my own research, and and I've been watching this for a while, and I finally spoke out because enough is enough. So, with that said, let's jump into this Karen Huger one-on-one because my goodness, there was a lot of hard-hitting questions that I wasn't expecting Andy to touch on, but I'm glad that he did, okay? So we start the episode obviously where we left the Potomac finale, which was Karen's released from jail. We get her inside the SUV where she's driving home and she's met with her husband, her little sister, and her daughter. And it was a very touching moment, and I'm sure it was very intense for her. But we can't just leave it there because obviously we need to know some more information around this whole situation that landed her in jail for 6 months. And so, Andy, flew all the way to Potomac, Maryland, and showed up at Karen's house. And what was interesting was when Andy got there, he says that he sent her a letter, but I guess in jail they don't hand you the physical letters. I guess they scan it through something to be able to receive on an iPad or whatever the situation is. But he did say that he had sprayed the letter with La Dame fragrance, which I thought was funny. Actually, I don't even know. Are they still selling La Dame fragrances? I'm not being shady. I'm just asking a general question. I need to check. Maybe Bloomingdale's. I'm assuming Bloomingdale's still carries it, or maybe they pulled it. I don't know. At any rate, we get to meet her son for the first time, uh, who I must have been out of it. I feel like we've never heard of this son of hers. Maybe we have, but I don't remember. But at any rate, he stays clearly, outside of the show and is not mentioned or talked about. And that's fine. Obviously, he's an adult. He probably doesn't want to be wrapped up in all that. But it was nice to see him there. And we find out that he took over Karen's business while she was in jail. And it was a nice moment watching Andy kind of be in Karen's house and kind of getting acquainted with her since she's been back home. She looked fantastic, by the way. I thought she looked really good. I hate to say jail did her good in more ways than one, but she looked great. I have to say she looked, clear. She was clearly like on a new path forward. She says that she's not really into her phone as much because obviously while she was in jail, she didn't have access to her phone. And then it was time for them to sit down and get to these hard hitting questions because I think we all had a lot of questions and there was a lot of speculation and a lot of rumors, but we needed to hear it straight from the, Grand Dame's mouth herself. And the first thing we jump right into is this body cam footage that we all saw, right? And it was very wild watching what drugs and alcohol can do to someone. And in my opinion, I think we all can agree there was clearly some addiction issues happening. This was, it's never okay to drink and drive, but the fact that we now learn that there was more than just alcohol at play makes a lot of what we saw on that body cam footage even more, I guess, shocking because it's like, you don't realize how that completely kind of brings out a different part of you, something that maybe is, I would say, the demon inside of you, because clearly a lot of things she was saying in there, like Thomas Jefferson's concubine and, all these egotistical things when she was talking to the cop inside the car. And even when they were speaking to her outside of her crashed vehicle, we saw a moment where she thought she was just going to get her little purse and get in the car with Ray and go home. And the cops were like, no, you're not going anywhere, ma'am. You're going to jail. So in terms of this body cam footage that we all saw, Karen says she had not seen the footage. Okay. She had not watched it. She didn't want to watch it. And it was interesting because I think we'd all assumed that she had been kind of privy to this footage in the sense that she saw it. So it was wild that she wouldn't have taken this plea deal that her lawyers advised her on initially. That's what a lot of the media reports were speculating, at least. Well, she's saying that, not only did she not watch the body cam footage, but she kept Ray completely in the dark when it came to all of this because she just didn't want to, stress him out. And there's obviously a lot of other things happening within their marriage that, was not great. So she probably just didn't want to add more pressure to things for him. So she says that he was left out literally. Like she had all her meetings with lawyers, all the details were kept between her and her counsel. And it was not until she went to her rehab treatment in Florida that her therapist forced her to watch it because she needed to face these demons. And when she watched it, she was completely embarrassed, didn't know who that woman was. And I thought it was a real moment of clarity for her She did say that, the whole rumor around the plea deal that she didn't take involving her only having 3 months house arrest was not true. So, not really clear on what the actual plea deal would have been, but it wouldn't have mattered because she didn't take it. So, a lot of things came up for her in this time. And I think a lot of it was, she was still having a cocktail, still drinking. And we find out that she was addicted to prescription medication, which, if you've ever been on any type of prescription medication, specifically antidepressants, when you drink, it completely alters the state of your whole being, more so than having a few drinks would make you like inebriated. Having a few drinks on antidepressants, and depending on the level you're at with antidepressants, could absolutely throw you into this hazed cloud of mess. And that's exactly where Karen was, at least that night. So we find out that she's been on prescription medication for quite some time. And it's been about, she says, 20 years ago when she got on initially. It was an antidepressant. Now, she does say she won't name the specific drug because she doesn't want to get sued. So I'm not sure if there's a link with her saying that she took this specific drug. Would that in fact get her sued? Because it may sound like she's blaming this drug on the DUI situation. I don't think it would. I think, if anything, yes, it's not good press for whatever this drug is. So maybe her legal counsel advised her to not say the name for that reason. However, we know it was an antidepressant. And what started off as a mild antidepressant turned into doubling the dosage when she lost both of her parents within 7 months of each other. So it's clear that there was a lot of skeletons and demons that Karen was fighting. But what I think was really a big vulnerable moment for Karen in this interview was talking about what happened to her at age 19. And I had known about this for quite some time, actually. A very good source explained a little bit of the backstory. So I'm happy that she's able to now comfortably come out and speak on it, because it's not easy to discuss any of those things. So I do applaud her for that, because I do ultimately think it's going to help others. I do. But she reveals at the age of 19, she was sexually assaulted. And that is where she feels she became emotionally stunted. And it makes sense, really, because I think once something like that happens to you, it completely alters your state of mind. And depending on how young you are, not that it matters how old you are, because when it happens, if it happens, it's going to mess with you and haunt you for however long until go get therapy or you deal with it in a healthy way. But it seems like with Karen, she kind of blocked it out, as most people would. And it sounds like drinking was a way to escape it. It was a way to numb it. It was a way to, kind of forget about it, if you will. And I guess this journey of the drinking started 20 years ago, because last year's reunion, we saw Ashley talk about how when she was on the train to New York to film that reunion, she had sat across from this gentleman who recognized Karen from the Legal Seafoods restaurant in Montgomery Mall. Shout out to Montgomery Mall. And she would day drink there and get pretty lit. So, you know, Karen acknowledged that and validated that that was, in fact, something that she used to do. She would go to Legal Seafood in the middle of the day, get slammed, and then call Ray to come pick her up. And this is where she initially sought out medical treatment for the drinking. Now, I'm not really sure what that meant, because I don't know if she went to the doctor and just got a physical and they said, hey, you're fine. And so in her mind, that meant like, okay, you can continue drinking. That's not really an issue. Or did she go to an AA meeting? Did she go to a therapist? Whatever have you. It wasn't very clear. What was clear, though, is the trauma that kind of haunted her from that, sexual assault experience at 19 kind of bled into her adulthood, and it haunted her within her marriage. And I'm sure other things kind of came up from that situation that she probably wasn't even aware of. But what I will say is, I know a lot of people want to judge her on being an alcoholic and all these things. And I will say in this interview, she didn't really say, I'm an alcoholic. I think she was very strategic in saying that, alcohol was used as a band aid, but it was actually the prescription medication that ultimately landed her in the position that she was in. Now, I'm not sure if that's taking accountability for the alcohol factor in all of this because in my mind, yes, you know, obviously the prescription medication led her to be in a situation where she was in such disarray that she doesn't even recall the incident that took place with her car accident. But I can't just negate that alcohol was a problem, right? Because clearly she was using alcohol for a very long time to put a band aid or mask whatever the issues were that she was having around her trauma. So I don't think it can be discounted as just being prescription medication that she had the addiction to. Now, someone who has been through sexual assault at a young age, I listen, it's not it's not black and white. And for any of you out there that have been through something traumatic like that, you understand that it's layered, right? And we all deal with it differently. For me, because it happened to me at a young age and because I was out on the social scene at a young age, I was vulnerable to, you know, just not great people all the time. And I was over trusting of people. And for a long time, I kind of kept it to myself because I felt like, well, it's my fault. I was in places I shouldn't have been. I was, going out with people I should not have been going out with. So me saying anything about this is just going to make me look and feel more stupid. But it wasn't until after years of battling those demons. And let's be clear, I also went down a path of, I was doing blow left and right. I was doing whatever I could to keep myself at a level to not deal with this. So in that space, I completely understand why she was utilizing those two elements to try to put a band-aid on something because you need an escape. Some days would just feel like you're being boxed in, you're closed in, but no one around you understands because, well, if they don't understand or they don't believe you, right? Because here's the thing with Karen, she said that a lot of her family members didn't even believe that that even happened to her. So imagine you're going through something so traumatic at a young age and the people, your family that you would dare not think they wouldn't believe you. And then you come to find out some of them are like discounting it or saying that that's not even true is even more of a reason to isolate because if no one around you, A, understands it, because they have not been through it, but then that leads them to not believe you for whatever reason. That also makes you feel like you got to take a step back and you've got to mask it and never talk about it, or you just got to push through it, right? There's this moment, like for me as well, it was like, well, just push through it. Like, don't be a little bitch. Go live your life, do what you need to do, and just stop revisiting this traumatic moment. But I think eventually it does catch up to you. And for Karen, it sounds like it caught up to her a lot later in life. And like I say, it's never too late to start changing. It's never too late to, you know, be the person you want to be. And I think in this situation, if you want to say God or the universe or whatever have you, felt like this was the right time for her to be shaken to her core to realize that something's got to change, something's got to be, different here because the truth of the matter is she could have absolutely killed herself or someone else. So the fact that she didn't is a blessing in and of itself because there's tons tons and tons of stories out here where someone's lost a family member, a friend, a loved one to this type of behavior. Someone driving home drunk, someone super inebriated and driving erratically and causing such an accident that it takes an innocent life. So I am not justifying or softening the blow when it comes to, you know, Karen's behavior that night. But what I can look at is how she shows up from this point forward. What is she going to do with, her life now? And I mean, outside of Housewives, because I do believe she'll be back on Housewives, but what is she going to do for others? Are you going to go and mentor young women and adults who have dealt with trauma or have issues with, narcotics and alcohol? It sounds like from this interview that is what she's going to be doing, because she does discuss while she was in jail, she took full ownership and she wanted to do everything she could to, show people that she's here to take accountability. So she volunteered, and part of her volunteer time was talking to these young girls. She said a lot of the girls were in their early 20s, and she was baffled at how they would be in jail at this stage of their life when she's like, it took her 6 decades to get here. And to be honest, when she said that, my response to that was, well, it could have been you a lot earlier. It's just that you hadn't been really caught or held to the fire. So there's that. But nonetheless, I understood what she was saying. She's like, look, I'm at a later stage in my life. And so, you know, if I'm reaping what I sow, fine. But you're 20 years old. What are you doing in here? I think that was also something for her to utilize as a way forward, because she did go to the treatment center before she was actually sentenced. But she does say that she was expecting a jail sentence. She absolutely was not going into it thinking that they were going to just let her slide. So, and listen, I know everyone's going to have opinions about this interview and say, oh, well, this, that, and the other. And this was an excuse, that was an excuse. Listen, I think there's still a stage of realizing that this is your reality. And I think she's doing a good job, or at least she did a good job in this interview, of not making excuses for herself or any of her behavior, because we've seen a lot of people, specifically on Bravo, who have done things or have issues with things, and they kind of parlay it and try to excuse it in some ways. I felt like overall she did take accountability, and I feel that this is going to work in her favor. I think this is going to help her help other people. And I don't think, you know, I don't think it's helped her marriage, it sounds like, because it feels like, yes, she discusses that her and Ray had some very honest, raw conversations while she was in jail for those 6 months. But she also said that Ray told her that he would be willing to let her go if that's what needed to happen. Not because he wanted to, but because maybe, this is not for her anymore. Maybe this version of Karen doesn't align with this life. He would be fine to let her go. Now, do I want that to happen? No, but do I think that if you come out of something like that and you are clear that that could change the dynamic of your relationship and not always for the best, meaning that doesn't necessarily allow for Ray to come with her on that chapter, then that's, something only time's going to tell. But based on this interview, mm, it sounds like there was a lot of things going on in their marriage that also haunted her. And listen, I've been privy to a lot of things. We've watched, some uncomfortable scenes between Karen and Ray, where, it seems like we had a situation where Ray was the husband, the breadwinner, the star of the household, if you will. And then Karen then gets on this show. She starts making money, she starts making a name for herself, and then she has to clean up Ray's tax issue. Remember, we talked about that on I don't remember what season it was, but she ended up being she is the breadwinner. And so that flipping of the script obviously did something to their marriage. It did something to him. It probably emasculated him, and I'm sure there was a lot of issues that came with her being the center point of the Huger household, when he was used to being the main source of income, the main, the man of the house, and now it's all up to Karen, and Karen's the one footing the bill, or she's got the finances, and maybe necessarily he doesn't have those types of finances. So I can see how a portion of that added to the dynamic of the issues in their marriage. But, I want them to work it out. I mean, they've been together for a very long time. And listen, sometimes you get to a point in these marriages where we've seen people just agree to live separate lives. They don't want to get divorced, whether that be for the family unit, for kids, or just personal, pride. I'm not a believer of that. I find that if you have to set an arrangement to live separate lives, then it's done in my mind. It's done. And listen, I've been with Jeff 14 years. Relationships are not easy, and you go through those ups and downs. And when you go up, it's great. But when you're down, it's like it's heavy. It's like, man, what the fuck am I doing here? But if you truly love and care for that person and you value them, I do believe that you can work through those things and you can come out of it stronger and better, because the downs are not going to stop coming, right? You can work through a down period and go back up, but you're going to face another challenge. And if you haven't worked through those prior challenges and you just kind of skimmed through it, or you brushed it under the rug, then it's going to catch up with you, because eventually the rubber band will snap. And if you're not prepared and you don't see each other and you're not willing to put in the work, because relationships are work. I don't care what anyone says. You can have the happiest two people, but if you guys don't communicate and are honest with each other, and I mean, be honest, you got to tell people things that they don't want to hear sometimes. That can be tough. So, in regards to Karen's marriage, I think, if anything, if this doesn't make their marriage stronger and pull them closer together, then it may just pull them apart. But they may not divorce. I don't know if they would do that. Like, I feel like Karen would stay together, but they would just live separate lives. And that's her business, that's her marriage. She's entitled to do whatever she wants, as well as Ray. They're both adults. So there's no judgment here. But I just wonder, does that actually make you happier? I think we're going to see a different side of Karen if she comes back to Potomac. I don't think we're going to see her the same way. I think she's probably going to be a little bit more uh, blunt. I think we're going to see a lot more of a realer Karen, in the sense that I think she's not going to bullshit anymore, because she's not going to feel cloudy. She's not going to be clouded by the prescription medication and the alcohol. And I hope that she's able to stay on that path. I really am, because I think watching her daughter and, seeing just how tough that must have been on the daughter and her son, like, that's not easy. I put myself in the position of one of those kids and thinking about, if that had been one of my parents, how would I have dealt with this in such a public way? That's got to be rough. It's got to be hard. Everyone's talking about it. You can't escape it. It's not a private matter. It was very public, actually. So, trying to think of what else came out in the one-on-one that was interesting, or something that, well, I mean, they did discuss. Andy did show her what Wendy said as well, about how Wendy felt some type of way about Karen not mentioning her in the pre-recorded video. And she said point blank that Wendy knows exactly why her name was not mentioned. And on top of that, when Wendy mentioned that she had a friend who also told her that, Karen drinks all day, well, Karen said Wendy couldn't possibly know that, because she lives out in Timbuktu. Now, for all of you that are not familiar, Timbuktu just is a reference to living far out in the middle of nowhere. And if we're going to be honest, okay, Wendy lives in Carroll County, Maryland. There's nothing wrong with that. So, people living in Carroll County, I'm not shitting on Carroll County, but what I'm saying is, in reference to the show being called Real Housewives of Potomac, She lives about an hour 15 outside of that. So she really is not in the spaces or circles on the day to day that Karen would be in. Because Karen actually lives in Potomac proper. If we're gonna be honest here, she's one of the only ones outside of Angel, who just purchased her home in Potomac. She actually lives in Potomac. So Wendy does not. And neither does Ashley, but Ashley just so happened to meet someone on a train who used to work at Legal Seafood who recognized Karen from her day drinking back in the day. So I thought that was interesting because I think that sets up what we saw in the trailer for the reunion when she's kind of, going at Wendy a little bit about, talking too much and, basically being like, bitch, you talk a lot and you had some shit going on in your house, apparently, that you should have been worried about instead of worrying about me and why I didn't, you know, mention you. And I'm interested to know exactly what that means. I definitely think that, depending on what happens with Wendy and their legal situation, if she comes back, uh, I'd love to see a Karen and Wendy sit down and find out what this is all about. Because quite honestly, it does come off a bit hypocritical on Wendy's part if you knew the entire time you guys were doing this, and then you're sitting on this reunion trying to talk poorly about Karen because she didn't mention you in this video. Are you really her friend? Doesn't I mean, I don't think so. I mean, if I was someone's friend and they didn't mention me, I'd still be hurt, but I don't know if I would jump to calling them out more and making them look worse when they were already down. So I'm not really sure how Wendy's journey on the show is going to be because, again, if they end up having to go serve time, then we may not have her on the show. But if she's not going to serve her time, then we know what her storyline is going to be next season. And I hate saying this, but these types of situations always kind of breed, a very, very big storyline for the show. So, in that regard, it's good for the show. But if you are the one going through it, it's not great for you and everyone involved. But this is what you sign up for, right? If you're going to sign up to do a reality show and you're going to put yourself out there, it's got to be the good, the bad, and the ugly, unfortunately. And because of everything that's been happening with Wendy and Eddie legally, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out on the show. I'm interested to see how they're going to discuss it on the reunion because, in my mind, I'm not even sure if she's going to be able to answer anything like at all. Because I'm pretty sure her legal counsel's like, zip your fucking lip, girl. Don't say a damn thing. And on top of it, they just asked because I think they were supposed to be in for their last court date like a couple weeks ago, and they asked for an extension on that. So clearly, they're still trying to work things out with regards to this case. So I'm not sure where it's going to land. I don't think they're going to do any jail time, if I'm being honest with you. I really don't. That's what my gut is telling me. I could be wrong, but I don't feel like they will. I don't feel like they will. And I don't know how people will feel about that. I've seen a lot of people say, well, it's an insurance company, so who gives a shit? No one was harmed. And, it's not like she was breaking into people's houses and taking shit and trying to liquidate it. She scammed some insurance policies, allegedly. And, people feel some type of way about corporate entities, healthcare, insurance, all those things. So a lot of people are just looking at it like, oh, well, they scam us all the time. And that's actually very true. That's a very true statement. But I don't know if it's worth going through what she's going through in order to do that. Allegedly, if that's what she did. Because I'm going to keep it real over here. Nothing has been proven. So we have to say allegedly. What else? What else happened in this interview? I mean, it was pretty, it wasn't like the lengthiest in terms of that. He really just went in with, I think, the questions that most people were asking, wanted to know. Sounds like Giselle was one of the only ones that reached out consistently while Karen was behind bars. So it seems like She sounded like she was good with most people except for Wendy. That's what it felt like. Because even with Ashley's thing, she was just, almost like that's Ashley. Like, what are you going to do? But she didn't discount what Ashley brought up. So I think we are going to see Karen back. And, I don't know how people are going to feel about that. I feel fine with it because I think, okay, she's gone into jail, she served her time. As long as she's staying accountable to the changes that she's made in her life thus far and she stays on this journey of clarity and she doesn't fall back into the alcohol or the prescription medication abuse, I think this could be good for the show for a number of reasons. But, you guys might come for me for saying that because, I did have a strong stance on the standing ovation at BravoCon, but I felt like at that point it was very soon. I think had BravoCon happened after we got this interview, maybe my mind would, I would feel differently about it. I just felt like at the time it felt a little bit like we're skirting over something here that we shouldn't be really applauding. But I also understand why people were applauding. It was like, okay, she's overcome this demon, so to speak, and she's back and she looks amazing. I have to give it to her. And a lot of you guys are speculating in the short form recap I posted that she may have gotten a nose job. I'm not really sure where she would have had time to get a nose job between being released from jail and doing the sit down interview, which it says on the show it was a week from the time she left jail, but I feel like he was there pretty much the next day. That's what I had heard. But, anyways, not that it matters. Maybe she got the nose job before she went in. Who knows? Listen, who am I to know what Karen's done with cosmetic procedures? But it seems like you guys picked up on that pretty quickly. So I don't know. What else is going on? Like I said, I'm in London. I'm excited to be here. I posted on my stories this morning that I'm in London, and all of you London followers made sure to show me some love. So thank you, thank you. If you guys have any recommendations for places to eat or shop, I am on a journey because while Jeff is away working, babes, I'm going to be out mingling and looking for the coolest vintage store. So if you guys have any recommendations, please, please do not hesitate to drop them to me because I am on a hunt. I don't know what I'm looking for, but I'm always looking for something. But at any rate, I know it's cold over there for the most part. It is pretty chilly here. It's not as cold as DC is, though, I will say that. It's a little bit rainy, but to be expected. We're in London, so I will probably leave it here for this episode. But yes, let me know your thoughts on the Karen one-on-one interview. And as always, please do have a great rest of your Monday. Stay safe. And until the next episode, guys, I will talk to you on the next one. Bye.